Picture yourself standing at the base of a mountain, so immense it seems to touch the sky. But something is wrong. Something is deeply unsettling. Above you, an entire section of the mountain hangs in the air, frozen. Millions of tons of rock and soil, caught in a moment of collapse, suspended between movement and stillness, as if time itself has stopped. This is not a scene from a science fiction film. This is our reality. These geological wonders, known as suspended landslides, are some of the most astonishing and mysterious phenomena on Earth. They defy gravity, challenge our understanding of physics, and hold within their precarious balance stories of catastrophe paused, disasters interrupted. For centuries, they have captivated scientists, adventurers, and storytellers, standing as both monuments to nature's power and puzzles waiting to be solved. In this video, we're going to explore these suspended disasters in all their complexity and grandeur. We'll uncover the science behind why some landslides tear down mountainsides in seconds, while others hang there for years, decades, or even millennia, trembling on the edge of collapse. We'll travel to remote locations where these frozen moments in geological time have reshaped landscapes and rewritten history. From the haunting cliffs of Turtle Mountain in Canada to the ancient, jagged plateaus of the Swiss Alps, we'll see how these suspended landslides are not just static wonders. They are living, breathing lessons about the forces that continually shape and reshape our world. And we'll meet the people who live in their shadows, communities balanced between beauty and risk, tradition and tension. But this is more than a tour of geological oddities. This is an invitation to see the Earth differently, to understand that stability is often an illusion, and that some of nature's most profound stories are written in moments of pause. As we journey together, you'll discover how climate change, human activity, and the sheer unpredictability of our planet interact to create these suspended disasters. You'll learn why they matter not just to scientists, but to all of us, how they influence where we build, how we prepare, and even how we perceive time and change. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to explore one of nature's most dramatic and suspended performances. The story of these landslides is still being written, and you are about to become part of it. So what exactly holds these colossal masses in place when everything seems to beg them to fall? The answer lies in a fascinating and delicate balancing act of opposing forces. Imagine trying to slide a massive, heavy box across a rough floor. The initial push requires overcoming the friction holding it in place. Now, picture that box as an entire mountainside, and you begin to grasp the physics at play. A suspended landslide represents a moment where the driving forces, typically gravity, relentlessly pulling downward, are perfectly counteracted by resisting forces. The most crucial of these resisting forces is friction, the internal friction between individual grains of rock and soil, and the friction along the potential slip surface deep within the slope creates a powerful grip. This frictional resistance is heavily influenced by the materials involved. A slope made of well-drained, angular boulders might have high friction, while one saturated with water and composed of smooth, clay-rich particles becomes incredibly slippery. This brings us to a pivotal player in this geological drama: water. Water pressure within the pores of the soil and rock, known as interstitial water pressure, is a true double-edged sword. In one scenario, a sudden influx of water from a heavy rainstorm or melting snow can infiltrate the ground, dramatically increasing the pressure between soil particles. This effectively pushes them apart, reducing friction and liquefying the material, which can trigger a rapid landslide. However, in the unique case of a suspended landslide, the hydrological conditions might be just right to create a temporary equilibrium. The water content could be sufficient to slightly lubricate the slide mass, allowing it to begin moving, but not so much that it completely eliminates friction. Alternatively, after an initial movement, the water might slowly drain away, allowing friction to reassert itself and arrest the slide in a new, precarious position. The composition of the earth itself acts as a natural break. Layers of clay or shale, common in many sedimentary rock formations, have peculiar properties. They can be very cohesive when dry, holding together firmly, but become plastic and weak when wet. In a suspended state, these materials might be partially dried or interlocked with more stable rock types, creating a fragile cohesion that glues the entire mass in place, at least for a while. The very shape of the landscape also plays a starring role in creating these frozen disasters. Topographic features act like natural speed bumps or catching nets. A large, sturdy ledge partway down a slope can catch a failing section of rock, halting its downward plunge and supporting its immense weight indefinitely. Dense, deep-rooted vegetation can weave a net of roots through the soil, binding it together and providing immense tensile strength that holds the slope intact. Even something as simple as a change in the angle of the slope can be enough to interrupt the momentum of a slide. If the mountainside transitions from a very steep incline to a much gentler one, the driving force of gravity is less effective, and the mass may simply run out of energy to continue, settling into an uneasy rest. This intricate interplay of friction, water pressure, material composition, and topography creates a state of metastable equilibrium. It's stable, but only just. The smallest change, another tremor, an exceptional rainfall, or even the gradual weakening of a key rock pillar can be the final straw that tips the balance from a breathtaking pause into a devastating conclusion. To truly grasp the profound reality of a suspended landslide, we need to look no further than the haunting story of Turtle Mountain. This isn't just a tale of a disaster that happened. It's the story of one that is still very much underway, a chapter that remains frighteningly open. The early morning hours of April 29, 1903, were shattered by a deep, grinding roar that echoed through the Crowsonest Pass in Alberta. In a matter of 100 seconds, an unimaginable 82 million tons of limestone broke free from the mountain's face. This wasn't a slow creep, it was a violent, explosive event. The rock, traveling at speeds estimated to be over 100 miles per hour, raced across the valley floor. It obliterated part of the mining town of Frank, burying homes, the mine entrance, and tragically, nearly 100 people. The rubble field created by the slide is so vast it remains a stark, visible scar on the landscape more than a century later. But here is where the story diverges from a typical landslide and becomes a suspended disaster. The entire mountain did not come down. In fact, only a portion of it did. A massive, unstable block, now ominously known as the South Peak, stayed precisely where it was. It did not follow the rest of the rock into the valley. Instead, it halted its motion, and to this day it hangs there, suspended over the town that was rebuilt in its shadow. This precarious balance is the result of a perfect and terrifying storm of natural and human factors. Geologically, Turtle Mountain was a disaster waiting to happen. Its very structure is a textbook example of instability. The mountain is composed of layered limestone that dips or slopes steeply into the valley below. This is like a stack of books tilted on a shelf, just waiting for a nudge to send them sliding. Adding to this inherent weakness is a major thrust fault, a deep crack in the Earth's crust that further destabilized the rock mass, creating a natural plane of weakness perfectly positioned for failure. Then human activity provided that final, fateful nudge. Coal mining operations at the base of the mountain in the early 1900s, while not the sole cause, undoubtedly played a role. The excavation of coal seems effectively undercut the already precarious slope, removing crucial support that was holding the massive weight of the mountain in check. It was like pulling the bottom book from that already tilted stack. The combination of this geological time bomb and the vibrations and excavations from mining created the conditions for the partial collapse. And so the South Peak was left behind, a permanent monument to that moment of catastrophic release, a sword of Damocles carved from stone. The mountain is very much alive. It is constantly, imperceptibly moving. Modern monitoring systems, including an extensive network of sensitive sensors and radar satellites, detect that the South Peak continues to creep and shift, millimeter by millimeter, every single year. These tiny movements are a constant reminder that the geological forces that caused the 1903 disaster are still actively at work. The mountain is not at rest, it is simply pausing. This has turned the area into a living laboratory and a sobering lesson in long-term risk management. The province of Alberta maintains a 24/7 monitoring station on Turtle Mountain, watching for any sign of acceleration that might precede another major slide. The data collected here is invaluable, helping scientists worldwide understand the behavior of these suspended giants. The legacy of Turtle Mountain is a powerful and humbling one. It demonstrates with brutal clarity how the intersection of natural geological flaws and human endeavor can create a suspended disaster, a threat that is not erased by a single event but is instead elongated across generations. It reminds us that the land beneath our feet is not always steadfast and that some slopes, once disturbed, may never truly settle. While Turtle Mountain shows us a suspended landslide on a human timescale, the Swiss Alps offer a perspective that stretches back into the deep, icy recesses of prehistory. To understand the film's landslide, we must journey back to the end of the last great ice age around 10,000 years ago. The world was undergoing a dramatic transformation. Massive glaciers that had carved and crushed the alpine landscape for millennia were finally in retreat, their immense weight lifting from the mountain slopes they had once imprisoned. This glacial unloading was like removing a colossal buttress, and for the mountains, it was a moment of profound and sudden release. The very ground, once compressed under miles of ice, now began to expand and readjust in a process known as glacial isostatic rebound. It was in this period of incredible geological upheaval that the film's Landslide was born. The scale of this event is almost impossible to comprehend. We are not talking about a few rocks tumbling down a hillside. The initial collapse involved an estimated 12 cubic kilometers of rock and debris. To put that into perspective, that is enough material to bury the entire island of Manhattan under a layer of rock more than 200 meters, or over 600 feet, deep. This cataclysm didn't just slide. It likely exploded from the mountain face in a violent, thunderous roar that would have echoed across the young, post-glacial valleys, reshaping the region in a single geological instant. But unlike many landslides that travel to their final resting place in one continuous motion, the film's event did something remarkable. As this unimaginable volume of material raced downhill, its journey was interrupted. Vast sections of the slide mass, perhaps blocked by the very topography it was destroying or losing momentum as it spread across a widening valley, simply stopped. They froze mid-fall, creating a chaotic, jumbled landscape of unstable plateaus and towering, fractured cliffs that look as though they were sculpted by a giant and then abandoned. Today, this isn't just a relic to be studied in textbooks. It is a living, breathing part of the Swiss landscape. The town of Films itself is built upon the ancient debris of this very slide. Hikers and skiers traverse slopes and forests that are, in fact, part of a 10,000-year-old landslide deposit. The evidence is everywhere for those who know how to look. Jagged limestone cliffs that seem oddly placed, deep, mysterious gorges cut through the debris, and areas of strangely hummocky, uneven terrain all tell the story of that ancient collapse and its sudden, partial arrest. What makes the Films landslide so crucial for modern science is that it provides a completed picture. While Turtle Mountain's South Peak is still a threat in waiting, the Films slide has already shown us its full life cycle, from catastrophic initiation to prolonged suspension and eventual long-term stabilization. Modern technology has allowed us to dissect this event with incredible precision, revealing the exact mechanisms that caused it to pause. Using airborne LiDAR, which uses laser pulses to map the ground surface even through dense forest cover, scientists have created incredibly detailed three-dimensional models of the landslide surface. This technology strips away the vegetation and reveals the subtle grooves, ridges, and flow patterns left by the moving rock, like fossilized footprints of the disaster. Even more revealing has been the use of ground-penetrating radar, which acts like an X-ray for the Earth, showing the internal structure of the landslide deposit. These tools have confirmed that the primary culprits were water and ice. As the glaciers retreated, they left behind vast amounts of meltwater, which saturated the mountain's bedrock. This water seeped into cracks and fractures, dramatically increasing the pore pressure and effectively prying the rock mass loose from the mountain. Furthermore, the slide likely moved over a layer of waterlogged, clay-rich sediments or even over a lingering, buried layer of glacier ice itself, which provided a temporary slick surface for movement before melting away and leaving the debris stranded in its suspended state. The enduring lesson of Films is one of persistence. This landslide has remained a dominant feature of the landscape for 10 millennia. Its suspended portions have not simply collapsed in the intervening centuries. They have become part of the ecosystem, their instability a permanent, though managed, feature. This long-term perspective is invaluable for risk assessment in alpine regions worldwide. It proves that a suspended landslide is not a short-term problem that will resolve itself in a few years. It is a permanent alteration of the geological reality, a new condition that communities and engineers must learn to live with. The Films slide teaches us that the Earth has a long memory, and the events we set in motion today, whether through climate change or construction, can literally shape the world for thousands of years to come. This ancient collapse continues to inform how Switzerland and other mountainous nations plan villages, build infrastructure, and protect their citizens, serving as a timeless and sobering reminder of nature's power to pause as well as to destroy. The delicate equilibrium that holds a suspended landslide in place, a balance forged over centuries or even millennia, is now being profoundly disrupted by a force of change operating on a global scale. Climate change is no longer a distant theoretical concern for geologists. It is an active agent, a trigger finger poised over some of the world's most precarious slopes. The mechanisms are both direct and insidious. As global temperatures climb, mountain permafrost, the icy cement that has long bound alpine rock faces together, begins to thaw. This permafrost acts as a critical stabilizing agent, filling the fractures and joints in bedrock like a natural glue. When it melts, that bonding strength vanishes. The rock becomes looser, more susceptible to the relentless pull of gravity. Friction, that essential force resisting collapse, is dramatically reduced as once frozen water drains away, leaving behind gaps and weaknesses. Simultaneously, the retreat of glaciers is performing a dangerous double act. First, like the removal of the film's landslide's icy buttress, these vanishing rivers of ice are taking away a colossal physical support that pressed against valley walls for thousands of years. The ground, now unburdened, can expand and fracture in a process known as decompression, creating new planes of weakness. Second, the meltwater from these glaciers doesn't just disappear. It saturates the ground below, seeping into the newly thawed and fractured rock. This dramatically increases the pore water pressure within the slope, effectively pushing the rock particles apart and further reducing the friction that is so vital for stability. It's a recipe for reanimation, turning long dormant slopes into active threats. We can see this alarming process unfolding in real time across the planet's highest and most sensitive mountain ranges. In the Himalayas, entire slopes that were once locked in ice are now exposed, revealing vast fields of unstable debris that had been frozen solid for generations. The potential for a catastrophic release is immense, with some of these suspended masses poised above densely populated valleys and critical infrastructure. Similarly, in the Andes of South America, communities are witnessing an increase in landslide activity linked directly to rapid glacial melt and changing precipitation patterns. The same mountains that have provided water and sustenance for centuries are now becoming sources of unprecedented risk. The situation is a tragic paradox. The very ice that helped create these suspended disasters through ancient glacial activity is now, through its disappearance, threatening to set them back into motion. To manage this escalating risk, scientists are turning to sophisticated climate models, not to predict the weather next week, but to forecast the behavior of mountains decades from now. These models integrate vast amounts of data, projected temperature increases, changes in seasonal rainfall and snowfall patterns, and rates of glacial retreat. By overlaying this climate data with detailed geological maps of known suspended landslides, researchers can identify which slopes are most vulnerable to reactivation. They can create hazard maps that highlight communities downstream that may face a new and urgent threat, allowing for proactive planning, early warning system installations, or even managed retreats. This work represents a critical fusion of two complex fields, climate science and geology, and underscores a stark reality. The stability of the very ground beneath our feet is now inextricably linked to the changing chemistry of our atmosphere. The climate crisis is adding a volatile and unpredictable new variable to the already complex equation of slope stability, turning geological time bombs into ones with alarm clocks that are now ticking ever louder. Gone are the days when geologists could only monitor these sleeping giants with simple measurements and anxious glances at the sky before a storm. Today, we have an entire technological arsenal at our disposal, a suite of tools that act like a planetary-scale medical monitoring system for the Earth itself. This revolution in monitoring technology has transformed our relationship with suspended landslides, turning what was once a matter of fearful speculation into a field of precise, data-driven forecasting. It all begins with an intimate ground-level view. Scattered across the most unstable slopes are networks of ground-based sensors, silent sentinels buried in the earth or bolted to bedrock. These instruments are incredibly sensitive. Tiltmeters measure the slightest inclination of the ground, detecting a shift as subtle as a mountain slowly leaning. Piezometers are buried deep to constantly measure the water pressure building up within the pores of the soil, that critical destabilizing force. Seismometers, so often associated with earthquakes, can also pick up the faint, constant grinding and creaking of a mountainside in motion, the low-frequency groans that signal internal stress. This network of ground sensors provides the foundational, real-time pulse of the slope. But to truly understand the grand, sweeping scale of a suspended landslide, we must rise above the ground. This is where drones or unmanned aerial vehicles have become an absolute game changer. Equipped with high-resolution cameras and LiDAR scanners, these agile machines can fly precise patterns over dangerous, inaccessible terrain. They create stunningly detailed three-dimensional maps of the entire landslide surface, capturing every crack, every bulge, every subtle change in the landscape with centimeter-level accuracy. By repeating these flights over months and years, scientists can animate the mountain's movement, watching it breathe and shift in a way that was previously impossible. A drone can safely survey a crumbling cliff face that would be far too perilous for a human to approach, providing a bird's-eye view of the instability without risking a single life. The most powerful tool in our monitoring arsenal, however, operates from the ultimate vantage point, space. Satellite-based technology, specifically a technique called InSAR, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar, has perhaps made the single greatest contribution to landslide science. Here's how it works in simple terms. Satellites in orbit continually beam radar signals down to Earth and then record the signals that bounce back. By comparing these radar images taken days or weeks apart, InSAR can detect changes in the distance between the satellite and the ground surface with an almost unbelievable precision, down to the millimeter. This allows it to measure the incredibly slow, gradual creep of a suspended landslide that is utterly invisible to the naked eye. It's like putting the entire mountain on a dial indicator and watching the needle move. The true power of InSAR is its ability to cover vast, remote areas continuously, providing a constant planetary health check. A perfect example of its success is California's Portuguese Bend landslide, a massive, slow-moving area on the Palos Verdes Peninsula that has been threatening homes and roads for decades. By analyzing years of InSAR data, scientists were able to identify specific sections within the larger slide that were moving at different rates, pinpointing the most active and hazardous zones. This precise information is invaluable for urban planners and emergency managers, allowing them to focus resources and warnings exactly where they are needed most. This marriage of innovation and geology, of data and dirt, is fundamentally changing how we manage these hazards. We are no longer simply waiting for the mountain to fall. We are listening to its whispers, interpreting its subtle language of movement, and using that knowledge to build smarter, safer communities. This tech-driven approach transforms a terrifying unknown into a calculated risk, a shift that saves not just property but countless lives. It's a powerful image of resilience, a dense forest clinging to a steep, unstable mountainside, its network of roots weaving through the soil like nature's own reinforcement bars. This isn't just a picturesque scene, it's a highly sophisticated, living defense system. The role of vegetation in stabilizing slopes is a fascinating dance of biology and physics, where trees, shrubs, and deep-rooted plants act as silent guardians against collapse. Their root systems perform two critical functions simultaneously. First, they provide immense mechanical reinforcement. Think of it as a biological net. Fine hair-like roots bind individual soil particles together, while larger, woody taproots penetrate deep into the ground, anchoring themselves to more stable layers of bedrock. This creates a cohesive mat that holds the entire slope together, dramatically increasing what engineers call the shear strength of the soil. It's the difference between trying to pull apart a loose handful of sand and trying to pull apart that same sand once it's been matted together with a web of strong threads. The second vital function is hydrological. Plants are incredible natural pumps. Through their roots, they constantly draw water out of the ground, which they then release into the atmosphere through their leaves in a process called transpiration. This continuous extraction acts like a natural drainage system, steadily lowering the water table and reducing the dangerous pore water pressure that can liquefy soil and trigger a slide. A well-vegetated slope is in essence a drier and therefore more stable slope. This natural engineering principle is now being actively harnessed in places like the Pacific Northwest. Here, ambitious reforestation projects are underway on clear-cut slopes and old landslide scars. The goal is to jumpstart this natural protective process, using carefully selected native species to rebuild the root infrastructure that logging or fires destroyed, effectively getting nature to do the heavy lifting of slope stabilization. However, this relationship is far from simple, and nature's solution comes with a critical caveat. The very same forest that stabilizes a slope can, under the right conditions, become the agent of its demise. This is the double-edged sword of vegetation. During periods of extreme rainfall, the protective canopy can become a liability. The leaves and branches of a dense forest intercept a tremendous amount of rainwater, which then drips down onto the ground below. This can concentrate water flow in certain areas rather than dispersing it. Furthermore, the added weight of the water saturating the trees themselves and the soil they hold can significantly increase the overall load on the slope. If the soil becomes completely saturated, the roots may lose their grip, and the entire vegetated mass can become a much heavier, more dangerous entity than bare ground would be. It transforms from an anchor into a sail, catching the water and being pulled downward. This complex interplay is brilliantly illustrated in the rugged, rain-drenched landscapes of New Zealand's Fiordland. This region is a natural laboratory for studying suspended landslides, where native bush blankets incredibly steep terrain. Research here has shown that the same dense forest that holds a slope together during a moderate storm can contribute to a catastrophic failure during an extreme weather event. The weight of the water-logged canopy and the saturated root ball, combined with the loss of friction, can be enough to push a precariously balanced slope over the edge. It's a delicate tipping point that depends on the intensity and duration of rainfall, the type of soil, and the specific root architecture of the plants. Understanding this nuanced balance is the cornerstone of a relatively new field called ecological engineering. It's not about simply planting trees everywhere. It's about knowing which species to plant, where to plant them, and how to manage them. It involves creating a mosaic of deep-rooted trees for anchorage, shrubs for surface stabilization, and perhaps leaving some areas clear for natural drainage. This sophisticated approach acknowledges that nature is not a one-size-fits-all solution, but a powerful tool that must be understood and applied with wisdom and care. The silent work of roots and leaves is a testament to the fact that sometimes the most advanced engineering solutions are those that have been growing all around us, all along. The shadow of a suspended landslide is not just a geological condition. It is a human reality, a presence that has woven itself into the tapestry of communities for centuries, dictating where we build, how we remember, and what we fear. These frozen disasters are far more than static features on a map. They are active characters in our shared history, capable of rewriting destinies in an instant. One of the most profound and ancient examples comes from the French Alps in the year 1248. The night of November 24th was one of unimaginable terror for the villages nestled at the foot of Mount Granier. Without warning, a colossal section of the mountain broke away, but unlike a clean collapse, it was a chaotic, partial failure. An estimated 500 million cubic meters of limestone crashed downward, yet the slide arrested itself, leaving a sheer, towering cliff face that stands to this day. The towns of Saint Andre and several others were completely buried under the debris, with historical accounts estimating the loss of life at well over 1,000 people. The event was so catastrophic and so visually striking, creating the stark, flat-topped mountain we see now, that it instantly became embedded in local folklore. It was interpreted as a divine punishment, a legend that served as a cautionary tale for generations, a permanent reminder of nature's unpredictable power and the precariousness of life on its slopes. This interplay between human settlement and geological instability is not confined to the history books. A much more recent event, the 2014 Oso landslide in Washington state, tragically illustrates how the concepts of arrested motion can complicate modern disaster response. While not a fully suspended landslide in the classic sense, the Oso event exhibited a terrifyingly complex behavior. A massive wall of saturated earth and sand moved across the valley at incredible speed, but its motion was not uniform. Some sections of the slide mass surged forward while others lagged behind, creating a chaotic, jumbled terrain of unstable blocks and debris that was described by rescuers as quicksand mixed with razor-sharp timber and rubble. This arrested and uneven movement meant the slide didn't come to a single, defined stop. It left a landscape of treacherous, shifting ground that severely hampered search and rescue efforts for days, ultimately claiming 43 lives. The Oso disaster is a sobering modern chapter in this story, demonstrating that even with all our technology, the chaotic and partial nature of a landslide's arrest can be one of its most dangerous and heartbreaking facets. Beyond these single, catastrophic events, the long-term presence of a suspended landslide often fosters a unique cultural relationship between people and place. In many parts of the world, archaeological excavations near ancient slide deposits reveal how past civilizations didn't just flee from these threats, they adapted to them. They learned to recognize the signs of instability, often avoiding building on the most dangerous ground or developing early warning systems based on observed cracks or spring activity. In some cultures, these looming, unstable slopes were not seen as mere hazards, but were imbued with spiritual significance. They became revered as the abodes of powerful spirits or gods, places where the boundary between the stable earth and the chaotic underworld was thin. Offerings might be made to appease the mountain, turning a source of fear into a focus of ritual and respect. This deep, historical connection shows a sophisticated understanding of the landscape, one that blended observation with mythology to create a framework for living within a dynamic and sometimes dangerous world. These stories, from the medieval legends of Mount Granier to the contemporary grief of Oso and the ancient rituals of forgotten peoples, all emphasize a crucial truth. Behind every geological wonder and every scientific diagram of sheer strength and pore pressure, there is a human narrative. It is a narrative of resilience in the face of immense power, of fear tempered by adaptation, and of a deep, enduring connection to the land that sustains us, even when it threatens to consume us. This interplay between people and perilous slopes is a fundamental thread in the story of human civilization, a reminder that our history is quite literally written into the landscape, and sometimes that landscape is hanging by a thread. Long before modern science offered its explanations, humanity looked upon these frozen cataclysms and saw not geology but narrative. A mountainside arrested in its fall was too powerful, too inexplicable to be a mere accident of physics. It was a story waiting to be told, a canvas for our deepest fears and most profound wonders. Across cultures and centuries, the suspended landslide has been a potent symbol, interpreted through the lenses of mythology, art, and folklore as everything from divine punishment to spiritual omen. In the rugged belief systems of Norse mythology, The very stability of the Earth was a precarious thing. Landslides and rockfalls were not random events but the work of giants, colossal beings like Ymir, whose shivers and movements could cause the ground itself to tremble and break apart. A cliff face holding millions of tons of rock in a temporary balance was not seen as stable, but as a place where a giant had recently stirred or where the gods had momentarily won a battle, freezing the chaos in place. It was a landscape alive with supernatural struggle, where the line between rock and monster was beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. This personification of geological force is a universal human impulse. Among many indigenous cultures of the Americas, particularly those living in the dramatic landscapes of the Pacific Northwest and the Andes, a suspended landslide was often read as a sign or a message. It could be an omen of change, a warning from ancestral spirits, or the physical manifestation of a broken taboo. The precariously balanced rocks were not inanimate objects but beings frozen in time, their very instability a communication from the natural world that demanded interpretation and respect. These perspectives reveal a sophisticated understanding that the land was not a passive backdrop for human drama, but an active, sentient participant. This worldview fostered a relationship with the environment based on reverence and caution, a stark contrast to the modern inclination to see such land primarily in terms of economic value or engineering challenges. As human expression moved from oral tradition to the painted canvas, artists became captivated by the same sublime tension that fascinates scientists today, the breathtaking beauty of nature poised on the very edge of violent transformation. The great Romantic painter J.M.W. Turner was a master of this theme. In works like The Fall of an Avalanche in the Grisons or his stormy seascapes, he didn't just depict disaster, he captured its terrifying moment of anticipation. His use of swirling, chaotic light and shadow, of cliffs that seem to dissolve into the fury of the elements, evokes the feeling of watching a suspended landslide, the awe, the dread, the overwhelming power of a world that is both magnificent and utterly indifferent to human presence. Turner and his contemporaries understood that the most powerful emotional response often comes not from the catastrophe itself, but from the agonizing, beautiful pause right before it happens. They taught us to see the sublime in the unstable. Today, this artistic legacy has been inherited and amplified by modern filmmakers and documentarians, armed with the magic of computer-generated imagery. Where Turner had oils and canvas, we now have CGI that can recreate the catastrophic slide at Turtle Mountain or the ancient collapse at films with staggering, immersive detail. Disaster movies use these suspended moments to build almost unbearable suspense, holding the camera on a teetering rock face before unleashing the digital avalanche. Documentary series like the BBC's Planet Earth use breathtaking drone footage to soar over these real-world wonders, their haunting narrators explaining the science while simultaneously inviting us to simply marvel at the spectacle. This accessibility has a profound effect. It brings these remote, dangerous phenomena into our living rooms, making the abstract concept of slope stability a visceral, emotional experience. A viral video on social media of a cracking mountainside can do more to raise public awareness about geological hazards than a dozen technical papers. This rich tapestry of myth, art, and media does something crucial. It transforms the suspended landslide from a cold scientific subject into a warm human story. It becomes part of our collective imagination, a shared reference point for discussing power, fragility, and time. The art reminds us that our response to these geological wonders is not meant to be purely analytical. It is also allowed to be emotional. We are supposed to feel small. We are meant to feel awe. This cultural lens ensures that the conversation about these disasters includes not just engineers and policymakers, but also poets, artists, and everyday people who understand the world through story. It is a reminder that the most effective way to communicate risk and inspire preservation is often not through a graph or a chart, but through a powerful narrative that connects with us on a fundamental human level. Living in the shadow of a suspended landslide means living with a unique and relentless form of economic pressure, a constant calculation where the breathtaking view from your window is weighed against the terrifying possibility that the very ground it rests upon could one day give way. The financial realities for these communities are complex and often harsh, creating a landscape where safety, solvency, and sentiment are locked in a difficult negotiation. Perhaps the most immediate and personal economic impact is felt in the housing market. Property values in the direct shadow of a known suspended landslide are inevitably depressed. The dream of homeownership collides with the nightmare of geological uncertainty, making mortgages harder to secure and resale a challenging prospect. Who would invest their life savings in a property that might be on the front line of the next disaster? This isn't just a theoretical drop in value. It's a tangible devaluation that can trap residents, making it financially impossible for them to leave even if they wanted to. This personal financial strain is mirrored and magnified at the municipal level. Local governments bear the immense burden of funding and maintaining sophisticated monitoring systems. The network of ground sensors, the regular drone surveys, and the subscription to satellite NSAR data all come with a significant and recurring price tag. Furthermore, these towns must invest heavily in emergency preparedness, designing and practicing evacuation routes, installing and testing early warning sirens, and training specialized search and rescue teams. These are not optional expenses. They are essential costs of doing business when your town is built in the path of a potential catastrophe. The tax base, already potentially weakened by lower property values, is stretched thin to cover these vital services, creating a difficult fiscal cycle for local leaders. The story of La Conchita, California, is a heartbreaking case study in this cycle of risk and resilience. This small coastal community has been struck by major landslides in 1982 and 2005, the latter tragically claiming 10 lives. The entire town is built below a steep bluff that exhibits classic signs of suspended movement, with large sections consistently creeping downward. In the aftermath of each disaster, the same painful debates erupt. Is it morally or financially responsible to spend millions of public dollars on massive engineering interventions, like immense retaining walls or deep drainage tunnels, to protect a handful of homes? Or is the wiser, albeit agonizing, choice to facilitate a managed retreat, offering buyouts to residents so they can relocate to safer ground? For the people of La Conchita, these are not abstract policy discussions. They are debates about the future of their homes, their community, and their way of life, all set against the backdrop of a mountain that refuses to be still. To navigate this impossible calculus, governments and insurance companies rely on increasingly sophisticated risk models. These are complex algorithms that attempt to put a dollar figure on disaster. They synthesize a mountain of data: the measured rate of the slope's movement from satellite monitoring, the estimated volume of unstable material, the probability of a specific trigger event like an earthquake or a period of intense rainfall, and the potential path and impact of a collapse. The model then calculates the probable financial loss, the cost of destroyed homes and infrastructure, the business interruption, and the immense expense of the emergency response and cleanup. This number, as cold and clinical as it may seem, becomes the foundation for critical decisions. it determines insurance premiums, which can become prohibitively expensive for homeowners in high-risk zones. It justifies or fails to justify the multi-million-dollar cost of a major engineering project. It shapes zoning laws, preventing new construction in the most dangerous areas and potentially condemning certain parcels of land. The engineering solutions themselves are monumental undertakings, both in scale and in cost. Soil nailing, which involves drilling long, reinforcing bars deep into the unstable slope, or the construction of vast catch nets and barriers designed to stop falling debris, are incredibly expensive. A single project can easily run into the tens of millions of dollars. Communities and governing bodies are then forced to perform a brutal cost-benefit analysis. Is the price of stabilizing this slope worth it when balanced against the value of what it protects? There is no easy answer. The economic implications of suspended landslides ultimately force us to confront a profound and uncomfortable question about our relationship with the natural world. How much are we willing to pay to live in places of stunning beauty that are also places of inherent danger? The calculations on the spreadsheets are about dollars and cents, but the reality on the ground is about people, their homes, and the fragile economic ecosystem that exists in the long, deep shadow of the mountain. To truly grasp the unique nature of a suspended landslide, it helps to place it within the broader family of slope failures, a group of processes geologists call mass wasting. Imagine the entire spectrum of how the Earth moves downhill. On one far end, you have the incredibly slow, almost imperceptible creep of soil and rock that might take centuries to shift a few meters. This is like the tectonic pace of geology. On the opposite, violent end, you have the terrifying high-velocity events, the rock avalanches that thunder down mountainsides in minutes, or the debris flows that become rivers of liquid earth, swallowing everything in their path in a matter of seconds. These rapid events are the sprinters of the geological world. They explode into action and finish their destructive work with a devastating finality. A suspended landslide exists in a profoundly different, almost paradoxical category. It's not a slow creep, though it may move in tiny increments, and it is certainly not a rapid, concluded event. Instead, it represents a state of dramatic and prolonged interruption. It's the geological equivalent of a movie paused on the most intense frame of the action scene. The energy for a complete collapse has been spent or arrested, but the potential for the rest of the story to play out remains terrifyingly present. This arrestment is typically caused by very specific physical conditions. Sometimes it's a matter of mechanical interlocking, where large, angular boulders within the slide mass jam against each other like a colossal puzzle, creating a fragile arch or buttress that holds the entire weight. Other times, a sturdy topographic feature, a particularly resilient ledge of bedrock or a pre-existing ridge, acts as a natural catching net, halting the downward plunge and leaving the bulk of the material perched high above the valley floor. This key distinction fundamentally changes how communities and scientists must approach the hazard. A debris flow or a rock avalanche is an immediate, acute threat. The danger is clear, present, and over quickly, leaving a defined disaster zone in its wake. The response is about emergency rescue and recovery. A suspended landslide, by contrast, is a chronic, latent threat. It's a permanent state of could happen, a sword of Damocles hanging over a valley for generations. This demands a completely different preparedness strategy, one focused on long-term vigilance rather than immediate response. It requires continuous, meticulous monitoring with the advanced technologies we discussed, detailed evacuation plans that are kept current for decades, and difficult land use decisions that restrict development in the shadow of the slope. The psychological and economic toll of living with this latent threat is a slow burn, entirely different from the sudden trauma of a rapid event. Understanding these differences is not just academic, it is the very foundation of effective hazard assessment and saving lives. By correctly categorizing a slope's potential failure mode, geologists can predict the likely speed, distance, and impact of a collapse. They know that a slope showing signs of slow creep might eventually need drainage improvements, while a slope exhibiting the telltale signs of a future suspended rupture requires a robust early warning system. A landscape prone to mudslides needs different defensive structures like deflection walls or channels than a valley threatened by a suspended rock mass, which might necessitate catchment basins or even preemptive rock bolting high on the cliff face. Each type of mass wasting event tells its own story about the slope's geology, hydrology, and history. The rapid flows speak of water and loose sediment, the avalanches tell of steep angles and brittle rock, and the suspended landslides whisper a more complex tale of friction, balance, and the powerful topographical accidents that can interrupt a catastrophe. If there is a single, universal protagonist in the story of landslides, it is undoubtedly water. Yet its role is never simple, never one-dimensional. It is the ultimate double agent in the geological world, a force capable of both creating stability and engineering utter collapse, often on the same slope under different conditions. To understand the precarious balance of a suspended landslide is to understand this complex and often contradictory relationship with hydrology. At its most destructive, water acts as a lubricant and a wedge. As rainfall infiltrates the ground, it seeps into the countless tiny spaces between soil grains and rock fragments. This buildup of what scientists call pore water pressure is incredibly powerful. Imagine trying to push two wet pieces of glass together. They slide effortlessly. Now imagine trying to pull them apart. The water's surface tension holds them in a stubborn bond. In a slope, this pressurized water effectively pushes the rock particles apart, reducing the critical friction that holds the entire mass in place. It's like overinflating a balloon between two objects. Eventually, the pressure forces them to separate. This process can rapidly liquefy stable ground, turning solid earth into a flowing, deadly slurry that loses all strength and surrenders to gravity. But in a fascinating twist, water can also play the role of a temporary stabilizer, particularly in slopes rich in certain types of clay. These clay minerals have a unique property: they are cohesive. When they contain just the right amount of moisture, they become slightly sticky and pliable, binding the soil particles together with a tenacious grip. In this state, a clay-rich slope can actually gain strength from a modest amount of water, holding its shape with a cohesion that dry, granular soil could never achieve. This delicate balance is the tightrope upon which every suspended landslide walks. The difference between a stabilizing dampness and a destabilizing deluge can be a matter of mere millimeters of rainfall. Seasonal patterns become a life or death metronome for these slopes. A long, dry summer can bake and crack the earth, creating new pathways for water to infiltrate deeply during the first autumn storms. Alternatively, an unusually wet season can gradually saturate the ground from within, slowly and silently raising the water table until it reaches a critical tipping point where the slope can no longer hold. The tragic story of the Vaiont Dam in Italy, though not a classic suspended landslide, is a horrifyingly perfect example of water's power as a trigger. In 1963, engineers were filling a magnificent new reservoir nestled in a steep valley. What they didn't fully appreciate was that the ancient limestone slopes surrounding the lake were riddled with clay-filled fractures and weaknesses. As the reservoir level rose, the water didn't just sit in the lake. It seeped into the mountain itself, slowly infiltrating those clay layers. This saturation dramatically reduced the friction along a deep, pre-existing slip plane. The clay, once a slight binder, became a slick lubricant. The result was catastrophic. One night, an entire mountainside, over 260 million cubic meters of rock, suddenly broke free and slid into the reservoir at incredible speed. The displaced water shot over the dam in a colossal wave over 200 meters high, obliterating several villages downstream and killing over 2,000 people. Vaiont stands as one of history's worst man-made disasters and a permanent, sobering lesson in hydrogeology. It illustrates with brutal clarity how the deliberate or accidental introduction of water into a complex geological system can have consequences beyond imagination. This profound understanding of water's dual nature has given rise to some of the most ingenious engineering solutions for managing unstable slopes. If water is the problem, then controlling its flow is often the most effective answer. On slopes known to be creeping or suspended, engineers will often install networks of horizontal drains. These are long, perforated pipes drilled deep into the heart of the unstable mass, acting like acupuncture needles for the mountain. Their purpose is to provide an easy escape route for groundwater, gently lowering the internal water pressure and relieving the hydraulic stress that could lead to failure. It's a passive, elegant system that uses gravity to constantly bleed off the danger. Another common technique is the installation of surface covers or impermeable membranes. By placing a waterproof layer over the top of a slide, engineers can prevent additional rainfall from ever entering the ground in the first place, effectively putting an umbrella over the problem area. In more advanced cases, managing the hydrology might involve regrading the entire landscape to improve surface drainage, ensuring water runs off quickly and safely instead of soaking in. Mastering these hydrological techniques is not about eliminating water's influence. That's impossible, but about manipulating its delicate balance. It is the art of listening to what the mountain's water table is whispering and knowing how to answer back to maintain a fragile, life-saving peace. The power of visual storytelling has brought the awe-inspiring drama of suspended landslides to a global audience, transforming complex geological events into accessible and often breathtaking narratives. Major documentary series have been at the forefront of this effort, with productions from the BBC's Planet Earth and National Geographic employing every tool at their disposal to unravel these mysteries. They don't just show us a cracking mountainside, they take us on a journey. We soar over these frozen disasters with nimble drones that capture perspectives impossible for the human eye, then dive into the science through meticulously crafted slow-motion graphics. These visualizations deconstruct the chaos, illustrating how friction battles gravity and how a single ledge of bedrock can catch 1 million tons of falling debris, holding it in a precarious pause. The narration, provided by trusted experts and voiced with gravitas, guides us through the suspense, balancing the sheer beauty of the phenomenon with a respectful acknowledgement of its latent danger. This approach does more than just inform. It creates an emotional connection, allowing viewers to feel the tension of these landscapes and appreciate the delicate balance that defines them. This mainstream coverage has paved the way for a more democratized form of discovery on social media platforms. A short, viral clip on YouTube or Instagram of a teetering boulder or a freshly opened fissure on a cliff face can captivate millions in a matter of hours. These snippets, often captured by amateurs and adventurers, bring an immediate, raw urgency to the topic that polished documentaries sometimes lack. They spark curiosity and drive a different kind of public engagement, turning geological hazards into trending topics. However, this format also comes with a significant risk of oversimplification. A 30-second video set to dramatic music might showcase the spectacle of a cracking slope, but completely omit the critical context of the monitoring efforts, the historical data, or the complex science behind its stability. This can skew public perception, sometimes fostering a sense of fatalism or, conversely, an underestimation of the true risk, reducing a nuanced natural process to a simple cliffhanger of whether it will fall or not. The most responsible media coverage, whether in a feature-length documentary or a 2-minute social explainer, strives to find a crucial equilibrium. It aims to marry the awe-inspiring spectacle with genuine education. It's about showing the terrifying crack in the mountain while also explaining the network of sensors that are listening to its every groan. It's about showcasing the stunning drone footage of a suspended valley while interviewing the geologists who can interpret what it means for the community living below. This balanced approach empowers viewers instead of just alarming them. It transforms passive spectators into informed citizens who can understand the headlines about slope movement in their region or engage in conversations about land use planning and preparedness. The screen becomes a powerful bridge, connecting the remote, raw power of these geological wonders to the everyday lives of people around the world, fostering an informed and global conversation about the dynamic planet we all call home. To truly understand the present and anticipate the future, we must sometimes dig deep into the past, uncovering stories written not in books, but in the very bones of the Earth itself. This is the realm of paleolandslides, ancient, often colossal slope failures that occurred thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago. These are not just historical curiosities, they are preserved natural experiments frozen in time, offering us a priceless window into the conditions that shaped our world long before human record-keeping began. By meticulously studying the evidence they left behind, the unique jumble of sediments, the polished and striated slip surfaces fossilized within cliff faces, the telltale layers of debris in lake and ocean cores, geologists act as detectives reconstructing cold cases of planetary change. These ancient events whisper secrets about what our planet was like in the distant past. The size and type of a paleolandslide can reveal the intensity of seismic activity in a region, telling us about historical earthquake patterns far beyond the scope of modern instruments. The composition of the slide material and the surrounding sediments can serve as a proxy thermometer and rain gauge, providing crucial data on ancient climate conditions, such as periods of intense rainfall or rapid glacial melt that would have saturated the ground and triggered collapse. Perhaps one of the most staggering examples of this scale is the Sedmare landslide in the Zagros Mountains of Iran. This event is so immense it almost defies belief. Geologists estimate that around 10,000 years ago, a simply unimaginable volume of rock, some 30 cubic kilometers, detached from the Kabir Ka anticline and surged across the landscape. The force and size of this single event were so profound that it utterly reshaped the local topography, damming rivers and creating new landforms. But what makes Sedmare particularly relevant to our story is that it wasn't a clean, complete collapse. Like the suspended landslides we see today, portions of this gigantic mass were left behind, stranded in various stages of arrest. Even now, millennia later, the suspended remnants of this ancient catastrophe are still clearly visible from satellite imagery, a permanent scar and a solemn monument to a moment of unimaginable geological violence. Studying a site like Sedmare is like finding a Rosetta Stone for slope failure. It allows scientists to see the entire life cycle of a landslide, from its trigger to its final resting place, all compressed into a single, analyzable feature. It provides a complete picture of how rock behaves under extreme stress on a grand scale, information that is impossible to glean from smaller, modern events. This long-term perspective is absolutely critical for modern risk assessment. A slope might appear stable when we look at data from the last 50 or 100 years, but the paleo record can reveal that it has a violent history of collapse every few thousand years under specific climatic or seismic conditions that we are only now beginning to understand. These ancient landslides serve as natural laboratories, showing us how slopes have responded to dramatic environmental shifts in the past, such as the transition out of the last ice age. This is invaluable for creating more accurate models to predict how similar slopes might behave under the human-induced climate changes of the 21st century. The layers of earth and rock hold a deep time archive of our planet's restlessness, and by learning to read it, we gain not just knowledge but foresight. The lessons buried in these ancient pauses are our best guide to navigating the unstable ground of the future, proving that the past is never truly past when it comes to the forces that shape our world. For the people who call these dramatic landscapes home, life unfolds in a unique psychological space, a constant negotiation between the breathtaking beauty outside their windows and the silent, looming knowledge of what hangs above. This is not a life dominated by fear every single moment, but rather one where a background hum of awareness tints even the most ordinary days. The familiar routines of school, work, and community gatherings are underpinned by a distinct kind of normalcy, one that includes recognizing the specific sound of the emergency alert siren during its monthly test and knowing the swiftest route to higher ground by heart. In the Italian Alps, for instance, villages nestled beneath unstable peaks have woven preparedness into the very fabric of their culture. Children learn about landslide risks in school, and local festivals sometimes even incorporate safety demonstrations, blending tradition with a sobering practicality. This isn't seen as paranoia, it's simply an accepted part of living in a place of profound and sometimes perilous grandeur. This intimate coexistence with danger fosters remarkable adaptations and a deep, place-specific wisdom. In the steep-walled fjords of Norway, where entire communities are built upon ancient landslide debris, you won't find new homes constructed on the most obviously unstable ground. Instead, through generations of trial and error, often guided by local law as much as by geological surveys, towns have grown on the sturdiest bedrock terraces, their layouts a tacit map of the mountain's hidden weaknesses. Perhaps even more fascinating is the rise of citizen science projects in these areas. Farmers, hikers, and other residents become the eyes and ears on the ground, trained to notice and report subtle changes to the authorities. A new spring emerging from a hillside, a fresh crack in a familiar trail, or an unusual amount of rockfall. This transforms the community from passive potential victims into active participants in their own safety, fostering a powerful sense of agency and collective responsibility. Conversations with those who live in these shadows reveal a complex and often contradictory tapestry of emotions. There is an undeniable strain, a low-grade anxiety that can surface during a week of heavy, unrelenting rain or after a minor tremor. Yet, alongside this, there is a profound and resilient sense of connection. Many express a fierce love for their home, a feeling that the sheer majesty of the place is worth the inherent risk. This is frequently coupled with a form of pragmatic fatalism, a recognition that they cannot control the mountain, only prepare for its whims. This blend of vulnerability and fortitude becomes a core part of the local identity, setting these communities apart. They share a unique bond forged by a common understanding of the landscape's dual nature. It is both their provider and their potential destroyer, a source of livelihood and of threat. This enduring relationship underscores the most crucial human truth about these geological phenomena. A suspended landslide is not merely a subject for academic papers or a spectacular clip in a documentary. It is a lived experience, a constant character in the personal stories of thousands of people. The psychological impact of this perpetual "what if" is immense, quietly shaping decisions, traditions, and the very way people perceive their place in the world. It creates cultures that are inherently resilient, deeply knowledgeable about their environment, and bound together by a shared understanding of the precarious balance between humanity and the immense, powerful planet we inhabit. This human dimension is the vital, often overlooked heartbeat of the story. Confronted with the ever-present threat of a mountainside in suspended animation, humanity does not simply stand by and wait for nature to take its course. We respond with ingenuity and steel, deploying a suite of engineering interventions that read like something from a superhero's toolkit, all designed to reinforce the unstable and buy precious time against gravity's relentless pull. The goal is never to completely stop the geological processes at work. That would be an impossible feat, but to manage them, to strengthen the slope's natural defenses, and drastically reduce the risk of a catastrophic collapse. One of the most common and effective techniques is soil nailing. Imagine a precarious slope of soil and loose rock. Engineers drill long, slender steel bars, much like massive reinforcement rods, deep into the heart of this unstable mass, penetrating through the weak zone and anchoring firmly into the stable bedrock beneath. These nails are then grouted into place and attached to a facing mesh, often covered with a layer of shotcrete. This process doesn't just pin the surface in place, it creates a new, cohesive, reinforced block of earth, dramatically increasing its overall shear strength and stability from the inside out. It's like performing keyhole surgery on the mountain, stitching it together with threads of steel. For slopes dominated by solid rock rather than soil, the preferred method is often rock bolting. This technique addresses the deep-seated fractures and joints that threaten to let large rock masses tumble free. Here, high-tensile strength steel bolts are inserted deep into pre-drilled holes and tensioned, effectively clamping separate blocks of rock together. This compression across the fractures creates immense frictional resistance, making it far more difficult for the rocks to slide past one another. In some of the most dramatic settings, you might see these bolts crowned with large metal plates or connected by a web of cables, a visible testament to the immense forces being held in check. But what happens when prevention fails and rock begins to fall? This is where passive protection systems come into play. In transportation corridors through mountainous terrain, like highways and railways, engineers install enormous catch nets and flexible barriers. These are not flimsy fences, they are engineered structures made of high-strength steel cables and rings, designed to absorb the tremendous kinetic energy of falling boulders, much like a baseball glove catching a fastball, safely arresting the debris before it can reach the road or tracks below. Nowhere is the commitment to this engineered approach more evident than in Hong Kong. The city is a breathtaking metropolis of soaring skyscrapers, nestled amidst incredibly steep, rain-drenched terrain. The combination of dense urban development and tropical rainfall that can saturate slopes in hours made it a hotspot for landslides in the mid-20th century. In response, Hong Kong developed one of the world's most sophisticated and proactive slope safety programs. Today, thousands of slopes throughout the city have been meticulously engineered for stability. It's a common sight to see hillsides covered in a geometric patchwork of concrete panels, a technique called shotcreting. But this is more than just a shell, it's part of an integrated system. Beneath that concrete skin lies a complex network of drainage channels designed to efficiently whisk water away, preventing the dangerous buildup of pore pressure that is the primary trigger for failure. This massive, ongoing effort demonstrates that with enough resources and willpower, we can literally reshape the landscape to protect human life. However, these powerful interventions are not without their own complexities and potential consequences. Heavy engineering itself can sometimes introduce new instabilities. The vibrations from major drilling, the weight of added concrete, or the alteration of natural drainage patterns can, in rare cases, inadvertently disturb the very delicate equilibrium engineers are trying to preserve. This is why the most successful projects are those that work with the geology, not against it. A brilliant example is the stabilization of the Randa landslide in Switzerland. After a major collapse in 1991 that left a massive scar and an unstable cliff face, engineers didn't just blanket the area in concrete. They employed a nuanced combination of careful rock removal to reduce the load on critical areas, extensive rock bolting to secure key blocks, and the installation of deep drainage tunnels to lower the water table and relieve the hydraulic pressure within the mountain. This multi-pronged, minimally invasive approach successfully stabilized the area, allowing monitoring to continue without the fear of an imminent catastrophic failure. It stands as a powerful testament to how thoughtful engineering can extend the life of a suspended disaster, turning a ticking time bomb into a managed, monitored slope. This entire field represents the critical translation of theoretical knowledge into tangible action, offering a profound sense of hope. It proves that we are not powerless in the face of these geological giants. Through careful study and innovative engineering, we can find ways to coexist with the unstable ground beneath our feet. The challenges posed by these frozen disasters have done more than just push the boundaries of geology. They have acted as a powerful catalyst, sparking innovation across a surprising range of scientific and engineering fields. This cross-pollination of ideas proves that the quest to understand our unstable planet often yields solutions with applications far beyond the mountain slope. In the realm of material science, researchers are looking closely at the very physics that hold a suspended landslide in place. They are fascinated by the complex interplay of friction and cohesion, how tiny particles of rock and clay can interlock and bind under pressure, creating a temporary but powerful resistance to immense forces. This natural phenomenon is inspiring the development of entirely new types of smart materials. Scientists are creating experimental surfaces and composites that can dynamically alter their frictional properties on command. Imagine a braking system for high-speed trains or aircraft that can instantly modulate its grip with a precision modeled after the granular mechanics of a creeping hillside. Or consider building materials for use in earthquake zones, designed to absorb and dissipate energy through controlled internal sliding, much like the gradual, non-catastrophic movement of a monitored slope. These bio-inspired designs are turning a geological problem into a blueprint for next-generation safety technology. The perilous nature of these landscapes has also become a powerful driver in robotics. The imperative to monitor unstable terrain without risking human lives has accelerated the development of incredibly agile, autonomous drones. These are not your average consumer quadcopters. They are sophisticated machines equipped with advanced LiDAR and obstacle avoidance systems, engineered to navigate complex, crumbling environments where GPS signals may be weak and every gust of wind could be treacherous. Their design is directly inspired by the need to map fissures on a vertical cliff face or hover inside a deep crevasse to inspect a slipping rock mass. The algorithms that allow these robots to make split-second decisions, stabilize in turbulent air, and create detailed three-dimensional maps in real time are now finding their way into other fields. The same software that guides a drone over a landslide is being adapted for search and rescue missions in collapsed buildings, for underwater exploration of shipwrecks, and even for autonomous vehicles navigating the chaotic, urban canyons of a busy city. Perhaps the most fascinating export from landslide science is the predictive algorithm. The complex mathematical models developed to forecast slope behavior are masterclasses in pattern recognition. They must synthesize a dizzying array of variables: minute ground deformation from satellite data, subtle changes in vibrational signals from seismometers, complex hydrological data from rainfall and groundwater sensors, and decades of historical movement records. These algorithms are trained to identify the faint, often non-linear precursors to failure. This expertise in predicting the collapse of a physical system is now being applied to forecasting collapses of a very different kind. Financial institutions are experimenting with these models to identify early warning signs of market volatility or the potential for a landslide in stock prices, looking for the telltale creep that precedes a major crash. Similarly, avalanche forecasters in mountain regions are adapting these same principles to predict snowpack failure, as the layered structure of a snow slope shares remarkable similarities with the stratified and weakened layers of rock in a landslide zone. The core challenge is identical: to discern the signal of impending catastrophe from the noise of background activity. This beautiful feedback loop, where a problem in nature inspires a technological solution that then benefits other, seemingly unrelated areas of human endeavor, is a powerful testament to the value of fundamental research. The study of something as specific and remote as a suspended landslide in the Canadian Rockies can ultimately contribute to making our cars safer, our financial systems more stable, and our rescue robots more capable. It demonstrates that investing in understanding the natural world is never a niche pursuit. It is an investment in a vast repository of ideas and solutions waiting to be discovered. The intricate puzzles presented by our planet's dynamics continue to be one of humanity's most fertile grounds for innovation, proving that nature is not just a subject of study, but our most brilliant and experienced teacher. The most powerful lessons about our unstable planet are no longer confined to dense textbooks or university lecture halls. They are spilling out into the world, captured by the curiosity of the next generation. A profound shift is happening in how we teach geology, moving from abstract theory to visceral, hands-on experience that makes the concepts of shear strength and slope stability as tangible as the ground we walk on. In classrooms today, students aren't just reading about suspended landslides, they are building them. Interactive physical models using simple materials like sand, clay, and water allow young minds to experiment firsthand. They can saturate a miniature slope and watch it fail, or engineer reinforcements with mesh and barriers to see how drainage and anchoring can prevent disaster. This trial and error process demystifies the complex physics, transforming it from an intimidating equation into a solvable puzzle. This immersive learning is being supercharged by cutting-edge technology. Virtual reality headsets can now transport a student from their desk to the edge of Turtle Mountain's South Peak, or allow them to soar over the vast, jumbled terrain of the film's landslide. Within these digital landscapes, they can manipulate variables in real time. They can trigger a virtual earthquake, dial up a 100-year rainfall event, and witness the consequences of their actions without any real-world risk. This gamification of geology is incredibly effective, fostering a deep, intuitive understanding of cause and effect that a static diagram could never provide. It's one thing to be told that water pressure reduces friction. It's another to virtually pump water into a digital slope and watch your stability meter plummet before your eyes. This technology is building a generation of geoscientists who think in 3 dimensions and understand systems holistically. Of course, no virtual experience can fully replace the awe-inspiring impact of standing on the real thing. This is why field trips to active sites are the cornerstone of geological education. A prime example is the Slumgullion landslide in Colorado. This isn't a historical relic, it's a living, breathing geological process. For over 300 years, this massive flow of clay-rich soil has been creeping downhill at a pace that is both slow enough to be safe and fast enough to be observed. Students walking its surface can see the evidence all around them. Trees tilted at drunken angles, known as drunken forests, created by the gradual movement of the ground beneath their roots. They can measure offset fences and cracking roadways, collecting real data that contributes to ongoing monitoring efforts. This transforms them from passive learners into active participants in scientific observation. The Slumgullion is a natural laboratory that teaches patience, showing that geological time isn't always slow. Sometimes it moves just fast enough for us to watch it happen. This educational mission extends far beyond formal classrooms, thanks to the robust public outreach programs led by organizations like the United States Geological Survey. The USGS doesn't just publish data for scientists, it works tirelessly to translate that data into actionable knowledge for everyone. Through community workshops in high-risk areas, they empower residents with the skills to recognize the early warning signs of slope instability, things like new cracks in foundations, sticking doors and windows, or the sudden appearance of muddy water seeping from the ground. They provide clear, accessible guides on creating family evacuation plans and assembling emergency kits. This work is crucial because it directly tackles the fear that can paralyze communities. By replacing uncertainty with knowledge and a clear plan, these outreach programs transform anxiety into agency. People stop feeling like helpless victims waiting for a disaster and start seeing themselves as informed citizens capable of protecting their homes and families. This comprehensive approach to education, from the sandbox to the satellite, is about more than just creating future experts. It is about building a more resilient society from the ground up. When a child builds a landslide model, they learn problem solving. When a community understands the geology beneath their town, they make smarter decisions about planning and development. This process of learning collectively transforms our relationship with these powerful natural phenomena. The suspended landslide is no longer a terrifying specter of inevitable doom, but a fascinating, complex system that we can study, understand, and ultimately learn to live alongside more safely. This foundation of knowledge and curiosity prepares us not with a false sense of security, but with the tools and respect needed to navigate a dynamic planet, ensuring that the next generation is not frightened of the ground beneath their feet, but fascinated by it. When a mountainside hangs in precarious balance, the most difficult questions we face are not about geology, but about morality. The science can tell us the probability of a collapse. The models can forecast the path of the debris, but they fall silent when we ask the most human of questions: what do we do now? Managing the risk of a suspended landslide forces communities and governments into a labyrinth of ethical dilemmas with no easy exits, where every potential path forward is fraught with profound consequences. Imagine being the mayor of a small town nestled below a creeping slope, handed a report that states there is a 15% chance of a catastrophic failure within the next decade. Do you order an immediate, costly evacuation based on a probability, upending hundreds of lives and potentially bankrupting the community? Or do you wait, hoping that the science is wrong, gambling with the safety of your citizens? This is the agonizing calculus of risk management. a constant balancing act between acting too soon and waiting too long. At the heart of this struggle is a fundamental conflict between individual liberty and the collective good. A homeowner on an unstable bluff may have a deep, generations-old connection to their land. They have invested their life savings, their memories, and their identity in that place. To them, an evacuation order is not a safety measure. It is an unconscionable violation of their property rights and their freedom to choose their own level of risk. Yet, from the perspective of the wider community, that same individual's decision to stay put could have devastating consequences. A collapse could wipe out critical infrastructure downstream, block the only access road for emergency services, or even trigger a secondary disaster like a dammed river that floods other homes. The authorities are then tasked with making an impossible choice: infringe upon the rights of a few to protect the safety of the many. This tension is exacerbated by the ever-present ghost of scientific uncertainty. Landslide science is not an exact prediction, it is a forecast of probabilities. A slope might creep for 100 years without failing, or it could collapse tomorrow. Making multi-million-dollar decisions, or decisions of life and death on the basis of such inherent uncertainty, requires a courage that goes far beyond technical expertise. These dilemmas are sharply magnified by issues of environmental justice, which reveal that the burden of geological risk is rarely distributed fairly. All too often, it is the most vulnerable populations who find themselves living in the shadow of these unstable slopes. In many cities across Latin America and Southeast Asia, the safe, stable land is already occupied and expensive. This pushes low-income families into informal settlements on the peripheries, often precisely on the steep, unstable hillsides that more affluent residents have avoided. These communities are frequently built without proper engineering studies, zoning regulations, or basic infrastructure like drainage systems that could mitigate the risk. They are left profoundly exposed, bearing a disproportionate share of the danger not by choice, but by economic necessity. When a government then faces the decision of whether to invest in massive slope stabilization projects, the question of which communities get protected first becomes a stark moral test. Does the town with the highest economic output receive the expensive retaining wall, while the impoverished hillside settlement is merely issued an evacuation warning it cannot afford to comply with? This is where landslide risk management intersects painfully with social inequality, revealing that a slope failure is never a purely natural disaster. Its impacts are shaped by human systems of power and poverty. Navigating this ethical minefield demands more than just good engineering. It requires a foundation of radical transparency and inclusive decision-making. The old model of top-down mandates, where experts simply announce a decision to a passive community, is a recipe for distrust and failure. Ethical management means bringing everyone to the table long before a crisis hits. It involves openly sharing the data, the models, and the uncertainties with residents in clear, accessible language. It means facilitating community meetings where people can voice their fears, their values, and their local knowledge, which can often be incredibly insightful about the behavior of their own landscape. Should we collectively invest in a costly early warning system, or would that money be better spent on a program to help the most vulnerable families relocate? There is no single right answer, but a just process ensures that the answer is reached together with compassion and a shared understanding of the difficult trade-offs. This approach acknowledges that the people who live with the risk every day are not the problem to be managed, but essential partners in crafting the solution. Ultimately, these ethical struggles remind us that while science provides the map, it is our shared humanity that must choose the path forward. For the most remote and hostile corners of our planet, where sending a team of geologists would be a perilous and logistically monumental undertaking, a quiet revolution in observation is unfolding high above the atmosphere. In places like the vertiginous, cloud-shrouded peaks of the Himalayas or the vast, impenetrable rainforests of the Amazon basin, the ground itself holds secrets that were once utterly invisible to us. These regions are geological mysteries where the signs of a slowly waking giant, a suspended landslide, could develop for decades without a single human witness. This is where technology becomes our fearless explorer, our unblinking eye. Satellites orbiting the Earth in a precise, silent ballet, and sophisticated aerial surveys conducted by high-altitude aircraft have completely transformed our ability to peer into these once-hidden worlds, democratizing access to the most isolated landscapes on Earth. The workhorse of this global surveillance network is a remarkable technology known as INSAR, or Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. Satellites like the European Union's Sentinel-1 constellation are equipped with powerful radar systems that do something quite extraordinary. They continuously beam microwave signals down to the planet's surface and then meticulously record the signals that bounce back. By comparing these radar images taken days or weeks apart over the exact same location, scientists can detect changes in the distance between the satellite and the ground with a precision that borders on the magical down to a few millimeters. This allows them to measure the incredibly slow, gradual creep of a mountainside that is utterly invisible to the naked eye. It's as if we have placed the entire planet on a dial indicator, and we are watching the needle move in almost real time. These subtle deformations, these millimeter-scale shifts, are the telltale whispers of a slope in distress, the earliest harbingers of a potential collapse long before any giant cracks appear on the surface. The life-saving potential of this technology was starkly demonstrated in a remote fjord in Greenland in 2020. Through the relentless gaze of satellite monitoring, researchers identified a massive section of mountainside that was steadily, inexorably, sliding towards the water. This wasn't just a landslide threat, it was a cascading disaster in the making. The sudden displacement of such a colossal volume of rock into the narrow fjord had the potential to generate a devastating tsunami, a towering wave that would race across the water and obliterate anything in its path. Because remote sensing provided this early warning, authorities were able to issue preemptive alerts to the small communities and research stations in the region, giving them crucial time to prepare for a potential evacuation. This event stands as a powerful testament to how these eyes in the sky are no longer just about observation. They are an integral part of our global early warning infrastructure, moving us from a position of reaction to one of proactive prevention. As our climate continues to warm at an alarming rate, the role of this technology becomes even more critical. The Arctic, the Himalayas, the Andes, these frozen and high-altitude regions are warming much faster than the global average. This rapid thaw is exposing new terrain and destabilizing slopes that have been locked in permafrost for millennia. Many of these newly awakened threats are located in incredibly isolated areas, places where no ground-based monitoring system could ever be installed. Remote sensing is our only window into these emerging risks, allowing for a continuous global hazard assessment that would be utterly impossible any other way. It ensures that a suspended landslide developing in a nameless valley in a remote mountain range does not go unnoticed simply because it is far from human habitation. By overcoming the formidable geographical barriers that have always limited our understanding, this technology ensures that our first line of defense is now a persistent, planet-wide sentinel system, watching over us all from the ultimate vantage point. We are standing at the dawn of a new era in our relationship with the Earth, one where the ancient art of geology is being supercharged by the most modern of tools. The future of landslide prediction is no longer just about installing more sensors or taking more satellite images. It is about teaching machines to see the patterns and hear the whispers within the overwhelming flood of data we already collect. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are stepping onto the scene, not as replacements for human expertise, but as powerful partners, offering a cognitive capacity to analyze information on a scale and at a speed that is simply impossible for the human brain. These algorithms are the ultimate students, capable of ingesting decades of historical landslide records, terabytes of satellite radar data, countless sensor readings on vibration and water pressure, and hyper-local, minute-by-minute meteorological reports. They process this colossal universe of information not to find a single smoking gun, but to discern the incredibly subtle and complex symphony of factors that precede a slope's failure. The true magic of these systems lies in their ability to identify patterns that are completely invisible to us. They can detect a specific sequence of conditions, a particular amount of rainfall following a 90-day dry spell, combined with a barely perceptible increase in the resonant frequency of the rock detected by seismometers, that has in the past consistently led to movement. They can learn that a certain pattern of deformation on a satellite map, one that might look like meaningless noise to a human analyst, is actually a highly reliable precursor to a major collapse. This moves us beyond simple threshold-based warnings like evacuate if it rains more than 4 inches, into the realm of probabilistic multi-factor forecasting. It's the difference between a weather report that says it might rain and one that tells you precisely which neighborhood will get the downpour, at what time, and how long it will last. This granular precision is what enables truly proactive measures. Instead of reacting to a disaster, we can begin to manage the risk long before it materializes, scheduling preemptive road closures, activating drainage systems ahead of a forecasted storm, or deciding to reinforce a specific section of a slope during a period of predicted stability. Leading the charge in this ambitious endeavor are visionary projects like NAS, a landslide hazard assessment model for situational awareness, or LOSA. This model represents a monumental effort to create a planetary-scale, near real-time landslide forecasting system. By integrating global precipitation data from satellite missions with a global landslide susceptibility map, the model provides a daily snapshot of landslide hazard probability for virtually every square kilometer of the Earth's surface. While it currently operates on a broader scale, it provides a crucial proof of concept and a foundational layer. The next evolutionary step is to integrate these global overviews with the high-resolution, local data from drones and ground sensors, creating a nested system of prediction, from the continental scale down to the individual hillside. This multi-layered approach promises a future where a farmer in the Andes, a truck driver on a Himalayan highway, and a family in a coastal community could all receive a targeted alert on their phone, giving them a crucial heads-up that the ground they rely on may soon become unstable. This powerful integration of AI with traditional geology is fundamentally shifting our entire paradigm from reaction to prevention. We are moving from a position of watching and waiting to one of anticipating and acting. It transforms the suspended landslide from an imminent threat into a calculated variable in a complex equation that we are learning to solve. This doesn't eliminate the risk, but it fundamentally changes our relationship with it. Instead of being passive subjects to the whims of geology, we are becoming active interpreters of the Earth's language, using the most advanced tools at our disposal to listen more closely than ever before. This technological partnership offers a profound sense of hope, suggesting that the tragic stories of past landslides do not have to be endlessly repeated. and that the precarious pause of a suspended disaster can be understood well enough to ensure it never has to finish its fall. There is a profound and humbling lesson written into the fractured face of every suspended landslide, one that transcends the graphs of geologists and enters the realm of the philosopher. These geological pauses are not merely physical events, they are powerful meditations on the nature of time itself. In our human experience, we perceive time as a linear arrow, a relentless forward march from past to future. We build our lives on the assumption of stability, trusting that the ground beneath our feet will remain steadfast. But a mountainside frozen in mid-collapse shatters this illusion completely. It reveals time not as a simple line, but as a complex tapestry where past, present, and future are woven together in a single, breathtaking moment. The cliff face we see today holds the memory of the seismic shift that fractured it millennia ago, the slow creep of the present moment measured in millimeters per year, and the terrifying potential of a future collapse that could happen in an instant or in 1,000 years. This forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth. The solid, permanent world we believe we inhabit is in a state of constant, dynamic flux. The mountain is not a fixed monument. It is a verb, a process, a story still being written. These suspended disasters become natural clocks, but they tell time in a language of grinding rock and shifting soil, on a scale that dwarfs our human schedules and calendars. They ask us to expand our sense of time, to consider the deep time of geology alongside the fleeting span of our own lives. This perspective has resonated with thinkers and writers for centuries, who have looked upon nature's instability and found rich metaphors for the human condition. The transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau, who sought to live deliberately in the woods of Walden Pond, would have understood the suspended landslide as a symbol of interrupted intention, a reminder that even our most carefully laid plans can be halted by forces greater than ourselves. Modern ecologists and philosophers of science see in these landscapes a powerful symbol for resilience itself. Resilience is not about being unbreakable or static. True resilience is the capacity to absorb disturbance, to become suspended in a state of tension, and to reorganize without collapsing entirely. The mountain that holds fast, even while internally fractured, is a perfect emblem for this concept. It teaches us that stasis is not the only form of strength. Sometimes the greatest power lies in the ability to hang on, to endure a state of profound imbalance without succumbing to it. This is a lesson that applies to our ecosystems, our communities, and our own personal lives. We are all, in a sense, navigating our own suspended states, learning to find equilibrium amidst forces that threaten to pull us apart. In our contemporary, hyper-connected world, which prizes speed, efficiency, and immediate resolution, the suspended landslide stands as a radical counterpoint. It is the embodiment of patience. It does not care for our deadlines or our desire for quick fixes. It operates on a timescale that is utterly indifferent to human impatience. In doing so, it offers a silent critique of our frantic pace and reminds us of the value of slowness, of deliberation, of allowing processes to unfold in their own time. There is a strange and unsettling beauty in this uncertainty, in the acknowledgement that some of nature's most dramatic performances have no scheduled curtain call. We are left to simply watch and wait, to sit with the unknown. This act of observation becomes a form of reverence, a way of deepening our connection to the fundamental rhythms of the earth that operate on a scale far grander than our own. It pulls us out of our self-centered timeline and asks us to consider our place within a much larger, more ancient, and more powerful narrative. We are not the authors of this story. We are brief witnesses to a single sentence on an endless page. This philosophical reflection is more than an abstract exercise. it fundamentally alters how we might approach the practical challenges these landscapes present. When we view a suspended landslide not as a problem to be solved but as a natural state to be understood, our relationship with it changes. It invites a posture of humility and coexistence rather than one of dominance and control. We begin to ask different questions, not just how can we stop it, but what can it teach us, and how can we adapt our lives to its reality. This shift in perspective is crucial as we face a future where the ground beneath our feet may become increasingly uncertain. The lessons of patience, impermanence, and resilience, etched in stone and soil, are perhaps the most vital ones we can learn as we navigate the changing world ahead. But this desperate search for safety is creating a tragic and dangerous paradox. As people flee the immediate threats of climate change, they are often forced into the path of another, slower-moving disaster. In the sprawling urban centers of Southeast Asia, from Manila to Jakarta, and across the mountainous regions of Central America, in countries like Guatemala and Honduras, a heartbreaking pattern is emerging. Displaced communities with nowhere else to go begin building informal settlements on the steep, unoccupied hillsides that ring the cities. This land is available precisely because it is known to be unstable, avoided by developers and wealthy residents who understand the risk. These slopes are often ancient landslide deposits or areas of active, slow creep, their instability masked by vegetation. The new arrivals, in their urgent need for shelter, clear the land for simple homes, unknowingly removing the very trees and roots that were providing a fragile natural reinforcement. Without the resources for proper infrastructure, they also lack adequate drainage systems. The combination of this deforestation, the weight of the new construction, and the concentrated runoff from rainfall can be the final trigger that reactivates a long-dormant landslide, putting the very community that sought refuge there in terrible peril. This creates an impossible dilemma for both the residents and the governments tasked with protecting them. The families living in these informal settlements are there out of necessity, not choice. They are the human face of climate injustice, often contributing the least to global carbon emissions, yet bearing the heaviest burdens of its consequences. For local authorities, the situation presents a crisis management nightmare. Do they evict these vulnerable populations from the unstable land, tearing apart fledgling communities when they have nowhere else to go? Or do they allow the settlements to remain, knowing they are sitting on a ticking time bomb, and then face the moral and financial responsibility when a predictable disaster eventually strikes? This is where the critical failure in planning occurs. For too long, climate adaptation strategies and geological hazard management have been handled by separate agencies working in isolated silos. A plan might be created to relocate a coastal community threatened by sea level rise, but if the chosen relocation site is on a steep, landslide-prone slope that hasn't been properly assessed, the solution becomes a new problem. We are simply moving people from the frying pan into the fire, exchanging one existential risk for another. Addressing this requires a fundamental shift to a truly holistic approach, one that braids together climate science, urban planning, social justice, and geology into a single, cohesive strategy. Policymakers and disaster risk reduction experts must begin overlaying their maps. Climate migration projection models need to be integrated with detailed geological hazard maps. Before any new land is ever designated for relocation or resettlement, it must undergo a rigorous geological assessment to rule out landslide susceptibility, liquefaction potential, or other hidden risks. This isn't just about avoiding active slide zones. It's about understanding the entire history of the landscape. Furthermore, for the millions already living in these precarious zones, we need innovative and compassionate solutions. Instead of forced evictions, the focus could be on community-led risk reduction, training residents to recognize early warning signs, co-designing simple, effective drainage projects to manage water runoff, and implementing early warning systems that are owned and operated by the communities themselves. This empowers people rather than displacing them, building resilience from the ground up. The goal must be to break the cruel cycle where the quest for safety leads directly into danger, ensuring that climate migration does not become a tragic funnel into geological hazard zones. The very nature of a suspended landslide is a powerful reminder that our planet does not recognize the political lines we draw on a map. A mountainside creeping towards collapse in the Italian Alps shares the same fundamental physics as one in the Japanese archipelago or the Peruvian Andes. This universal truth has sparked a revolutionary shift in how the scientific community approaches these hazards, moving from isolated national projects to a truly global, collaborative mission. The challenges are simply too vast, the risks too interconnected for any single country to tackle alone. This spirit of international cooperation has given rise to formal alliances that function as a global brain trust for landslide research. Foremost among them is the International Consortium on Landslides, a remarkable organization that brings together scientists, engineers, and policymakers from over 60 countries. The ICL creates a vital neutral ground where data, which can sometimes be politically sensitive, is shared openly for the greater good. It standardizes monitoring techniques so that measurements taken in Canada can be directly compared to those in China, and it facilitates the rapid deployment of experts following a major disaster, ensuring that hard-won lessons from one tragedy can inform preparedness across the globe. This collaborative framework is powerfully amplified by the reach and mandate of UNESCO. Through its landslide mitigation programs, UNESCO helps bridge the gap between cutting-edge science and practical, on-the-ground action, especially in developing nations that may lack resources but face extreme risk. These programs are not about imposing outside solutions, they are about empowerment. They provide training for local geologists, supply communities with accessible monitoring equipment, and help integrate landslide risk into national education curricula. This ensures that the knowledge needed to stay safe is grown locally, creating a self-sustaining culture of resilience that remains long after the international experts have departed. The result is a dynamic, constantly evolving network of shared wisdom. A novel drainage technique perfected in the rainy hills of Hong Kong can be adapted for use in the slopes of Brazil. The AI algorithms developed in American universities are trained on landslide data from every continent, making them smarter and more universally applicable. This free flow of information means that a breakthrough in one lab can trigger a wave of innovation worldwide, accelerating our collective understanding at an unprecedented pace. Perhaps no single project better illustrates the profound value of this global partnership than the ongoing study of the Oso Landslide in Tajikistan. Over a century ago, in 1911, a colossal earthquake triggered one of the largest rock avalanches in recorded history. An estimated 2.2 cubic kilometers of rock plunged into the valley of the Batang River, instantly creating the Oso Dam and forming Lake Ceres, a body of water so deep it now holds 17 cubic kilometers of water. What makes this a quintessential suspended landslide is that the dam itself, the tallest natural dam in the world, is not a static, stable structure. It is a massive, jumbled pile of rock that remains under constant threat from erosion, seismic activity, and the immense pressure of the lake it holds back. The potential for a catastrophic failure and a downstream flood of unimaginable proportions makes it a concern for the entire Central Asian region. To understand this ticking clock, A multinational team of experts from Tajikistan, Russia, Switzerland, and the United States, among others, has pooled its expertise. They've conducted joint expeditions to this remote and treacherous site, shared satellite radar data to monitor its millimeter-scale deformations, and run complex hydrodynamic models to simulate various failure scenarios. This collective effort has transformed our isolated natural wonder into a living laboratory, and the lessons learned about monitoring and mitigating the risks of landslide-dammed lakes are now applied to similar sites from the Himalayas to the Andes, making the world safer one shared data point at a time. This model of cooperation proves that when faced with a shared threat, our shared humanity and shared curiosity can build the strongest possible defense, turning isolated pockets of knowledge into a united front against disaster. Suspended landslides are far more than just geological oddities or spectacular footage for documentaries. They stand as profound testament to Earth's dynamic and delicate balance between motion and stasis, powerful reminders written in stone and soil that our planet is a living, breathing entity in a state of constant flux. These frozen disasters offer us invaluable lessons that stretch across disciplines, teaching us about the fundamental physics of our world, the complex mathematics of risk assessment, and the incredible depth of human adaptation and resilience in the face of uncertainty. From the haunting, frozen cliffs of Turtle Mountain in Canada to the ancient, creeping slopes high in the Alps, these landscapes are not static backdrops to our lives. They are active participants in a planetary story, reminding us of nature's awesome, humbling power and its surprising, often heartbreaking fragility. They show us that stability is not a permanent condition, but a temporary and hard-won equilibrium. Now, as two of the greatest forces of our time, climate change and technological innovation, radically reshape our relationship with the planet, the urgency to understand these suspended giants has never been greater. The warming climate acts as a destabilizing trigger, threatening to awaken sleeping giants from the Arctic to the tropics, while our new suite of monitoring technologies offers an unprecedented window into their subtle movements, giving us the potential to predict and prepare like never before. This intersection of rising risk and rising knowledge makes the study of these phenomena critically important for global safety, sustainable development, and our very survival. It challenges us to look beyond short-term gains and to make decisions based on deep time and profound respect for natural systems. We sincerely hope this journey across continents and into the heart of these mountains has ignited within you a sense of awe and a burning curiosity about the magnificent and mysterious world we inhabit. These natural wonders are all around us, holding stories that are waiting to be read. We would love to hear which of these suspended disasters captivated you the most. Share your thoughts and personal connections in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration into Earth's mysteries, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Remember, in the breathtaking pause of a landslide, we find a powerful narrative of tension, beauty, and uncertainty, a story that is still being written, and one that we all have a part in